Welcome to Planning Phase Syndicate. This is episode 19 of our Star Wars Unlimited podcast. Tonight we're going to be talking Palpatine Aggression deck building. Can't wait. Very excited. We Alex and I have been running Red Palpatine since I've been running it since April. Alex has probably been running it since day one. We've never really done a deck tech. We've never done anything. Like, we just talked, hey, well, these are the lists that we run. And we never actually I don't think we even shared our set one list with anybody at all. So, long story short, we wanted to do a Red Palpatine discussion at some point. We were going to do a deck tech, and then we kind of got sidetracked, and we've been playing Green Palpatine more than I probably should be playing Green Palpatine. And there was a gentleman named Elliot that went 5-2, I believe, in GenCon on day 2, and I reached out to him and said, hey, I don't know if you're this guy, but if you're this guy, we got 2 of the hosts on the show have exclusively played Palpatine and Shoutouts for almost exclusively played Palpatine and Shoutouts for the last 3 months. Can you want to join the show? Let's talk about your deck. So tonight, that's what we're going to do. We also have a new segment that we're going to be doing called That's Too Much, Man. And it's going to be, we are going to do it every week, but it's going to like a for fun segment that I threw together that essentially we're going to take a card that costs a lot of money, that if you don't want to invest that kind of money, we're going to take that and say, hey, here you go. Here's some alternatives you can use. And then we're going to explain why we chose these alternatives. So tonight we're going to be talking about Vader and why you don't have to pay $62 if you want some very similar Vader-ish effects to go with your different decks. All right. With that being said, why don't I bring in my co-host for tonight? Please welcome to the show, Mr. JJ the Giant Still Suck. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm surprised you say that, considering that they lost to the Lions. And I also will announce here on the stream that we made a bet that whoever's team lost, they would have to wear the other team's person's hats for the rest of the season. So Mr. Tanner here has lost the bet, so he will be wearing a New York Giants hat for the rest of the season that will be coming to him in the very near future. So yes.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's not a couple of the ugly hats that you tried to send me pictures of, because those I will not be wearing. Yeah. All right. Let me also bring in Alex the Benchwarmer. How are you tonight, sir?
Oh, I'm okay. I spent all day physically building decks. I built 9 with minimal overlap, so I'm burnt. But I'm gonna play them over the next month or so, and one of them actually was a Palpatine deck. It was still green because I'm still working on my red one, but it's still Palpatine. Every time I whip it out, everyone just gets up and leaves the table. So,
yeah.
Yeah. So, kind of, yeah. So 9 decks. That's a lot. So you have enough cards that you can build enough outside similar decks that they don't have a bunch of crossover.
Yeah, I have crossover with just a couple cards like my Lukes. I have a green Luke deck and a mono blue Ray deck. So you kind of need the Lukes across those. But yeah, it's like yellow Kylo. He doesn't really share too much with other things. Like green Boba,
nope.
Red Vader, or blue Vader. So
yellow Kylo's super cheap anyway, right? Because you're not putting very much over a 5 or 6 cost card on that deck. So
yeah, unless you want the actual Boba Fett units, which is take it or leave it for me. It's it doesn't share anything, and it's super super cheap to run. I'm not even sure if I have more than 4 rares in that deck.
Yeah, which is nice, and I think we'll have to talk about that sometime too, because I've been wondering if Kylo's going to start creeping up a little bit in the aggro scene and stuff like that, because if Sabine's going to be a prominent character, right? Other aggro decks that can compete with her, even if they don't compete with a lot of other things, but can really go after her, is some things that we could see some with. So.
I did manage to win on turn 2, but that was just the craziest, everything fell in the line kind of thing.
Yeah. And all right, our guest for tonight is Elliot. Elliot, welcome to Planning Phase Syndicate. You can keep the cat. It's okay. You can keep your cat. It's fine with us.
Hello. Yeah, thank you for having me on, and hopefully there's some fellow Palp players out there. It takes a real special breed of people, and as you two gentlemen know, to just sit there with the Palpatine as a menacing threat on the board the whole time as you slowly ping and hopefully have lots of either slightly angry people in person and lots of Carabas disconnects. So I'm excited to share some love that I think Palpatine deserves.
Yeah, and so to tell you a real quick story, I think I've told this on the show before, and I can't remember if I told you this or not, but so Alex says, hey, you got to pick up this Palpatine deck. This is, you're going to like it, and this is probably your style, blah, blah, blah. So I started playing it, didn't have a lot of success with it. He's like, oh, you're running it incorrectly. You got to do this different. Then all of a sudden I started bringing it to my locals, and the first couple of weeks I lost. I got my ass handed to me like 2 weeks in a row. Then that third week, I started taking down every one of the Boba Fett greens. Like anybody who's running a meta deck is just like, it was gone. To the point where by the time we had our first showdown, Alex came out to the first showdown because we both live in Michigan, just on opposite sides of the state. And he came out to the first showdown with the Palpatine red deck. And the guys at my local actually teched against me. Like they specifically had sideboard stuff in there just to tech against red Palpatine, specifically against me. So Alex got a little bit of the anti-Palpatine hate because of me that day. So yeah, but we do love Palpatine. I don't know what you guys did this weekend. Did you guys have a good weekend? Anybody get some swoo in? I didn't get much in this weekend. We did our podcast on Wednesday, so I left my locals early to podcast last Wednesday to make up, and then my son went and played in a sealed tournament, and I didn't know if there'd be enough seats, so I didn't go, and I should have, because then I found out they had like 4 boxes worth of stuff to run sealed with, so I could have easily gone and played. But anyone else do anything fun this weekend?
Yeah, I just saw some movies, played a couple games, nothing deep and intensive. Again, it was mostly like, I'm going to build 9 decks. What can I stretch my entire collection to build?
Yeah, I'm going to give out a shout out to Sandy. He said he actually gave me an idea for a ECL Red Han deck that I've been playing a lot recently, and it's definitely a lot of fun. Deploys a lot of units very, very early, and if you're not prepared for it, like it can absolutely just mess up your game plan very fast. So thanks to Sandy for that. That's actually been pretty fun playing and testing up.
Which is funny because they're also a Palpatine player, so I'm very surprised they're on Han red or Han green. That's surprising to me. Elliot, did you do anything fun this weekend?
This weekend, I will say I taught someone to play Star Wars Unlimited, so that is, join the fold. Last weekend, though, my local had a win-a-box and took the red Palp there and got second place, just defeated by Ray Red. So a lot of good matchups there, a lot of good fights, but and still I didn't open up I got 16 packs all told, not a single legendary. So RNG was not in my favor that day.
Oof, man.
Well, all right. Well, before we do it, let's introduce our new segment. So we had a recommendation that came from the mains Unlimited Discord. So if you're not in that Discord, you should definitely join. There's a Discord with like 10,000 people in it or more. And it's like the main Unlimited Discord, I think. I don't know. That's the one that I was introduced to back in the day when the game first came out. And long story short, we there was a gentleman that they gave us a shout out in the Discord and said, "Hey, I got a new segment. You guys should actually talk about how to replace expensive cards." And I thought about that. I was like, "Hey, that's actually a really good idea because there's a lot of people out there, especially like in our podcast, it doesn't sit there and say, hey, we have to focus specifically on competitive, right? Like our Palpatine red deck was not the most competitive deck in the world, but we made it work, right? And it actually was not, outside of the Vaders, the Vaders were the only real expensive piece for the most part in that deck for a long time. And so I said, well, hey, that's a good idea. JJ, for example, only bought 2 boxes, and so he could benefit from this sometimes, especially because I don't think he wouldn't drop $70 a piece on the Vaders.
No.
And so, we thought it would be a good idea to introduce and just say, hey, why don't we do a discussion or a short discussion where we take a card and we say, okay, what are some good examples that you could replace it with and why you would pick these specific cards to pick around it, right? And so we're going to do that. It's called That's Too Much, Man.
That's too much, man.
All right. Welcome back to our new segment. We have That's Too Much, Man. It's our new segment. Tonight we're going to be talking about Vader. We said, hey, Vader costs only $63 now, so it's a lot cheaper than what it was. It was almost $100 for a while there, and then it dropped to $70, and now we're down closer to that $63 mark. And we said, hey, what do we want to do differently? So the first thing I want to do is JJ, tell me what is Vader. So why don't you read the card, tell us what the card is, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the picks we want for cards you can use to replace that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vader's a 7-cost cunning and villainy aspect, and he reads ambush. When played, search the top 10 cards of your deck for any villainy card units with a combined cost of 3 or less and play each of them for free. He comes in with 5 attack and 7 health there. So he can absolutely suddenly swing the board in your favor when he comes in, being able to attack immediately and deploy some cheap units into the battlefield really, really quickly.
Awesome. So we had a couple of different picks, and so the first thing I'm going to say is we didn't specifically stick to green, though Vader is green. So if you're looking for a strict green replacement, we're going to cover those first, and then we'll kind of talk about the red replacements. A lot of times you're running Vader, and most of the time you're running it with like a red deck, but you could also be running Boba Green, that type of a thing. So it's kind of not an option all the time to have that red card, but we thought, hey, let's throw a couple other cards in there that have very similar-ish effects that you can use in maybe other decks. So Alex, what was your first pick?
So like Vader, there's a couple different things, right? Like he has ambush, and that's really, really good, but he also pulls a unit out of your deck most of the time. And that's like very good. But you can't really replicate that with any of the other cards. I mean, you got like Hot Banth, but that's way too low down there. So I chose a couple. So if you want like the ambush, I mean, Maul is pretty much like an incredible substitute. He's going for $750 right now, so relatively cheap, significantly cheaper than $60.
Yeah.
And he actually has 2 more attack and overwhelm. And if you have some underworld in there, maybe like Salacious Crumb or something, you just puts the damage onto him. So your Vader, your Maul can live longer than like your Vader. And the 7 damage is actually the difference between 5 and 7 really matters in this set right now, because a lot of the other cards like Poe and Wrecker just have 6 health, right, or more. So it's rough.
Or your leaders, like leaders now have 7 health, like Bo, right?
Yeah, and like Luke and Boba, but they're all. I mean, they're typically deploying before you drop them all, unless you ramp. But like that jump is actually pretty significant.
All right, and then the other one of the other ones. This is we're gonna go with 97th Legion. This is actually the first thing that Alex told me, because when I originally bought into the game, I bought 2 boxes, and then we just went to like 5 or 6 pre-releases, and that was what we did. And I got a lot of stuff for the game, but I didn't get everything, and I definitely only got 2 Vaders. I got very lucky, and I pulled 2 Vaders between the box and the 1 pre-release kit. We had a Vader and a pre-release kit, and everybody hated me because
your luck.
Yeah, well, at the time we didn't know Vader was going to be that much, but I won quite a few games because when you drop Vader in pre-release, it was pretty good. So it worked out very well for me. But anyway, so set 97th Legion, and essentially this unit does not get any ambush. It doesn't have the overwhelm, but it's very cheap, and essentially it says you get plus 1+1 for every resource you control. So when you deploy it at 7, it's a 7/7 unit. You cannot ambush this out without using timely intervention, but it was nice to be able to drop this, and I actually went to a Store Showdown where I didn't have a third Vader, and I was able to use this, and essentially it was a very great card because sometimes I didn't play it till later, and then when it came down with 10 resources, it was like, all right, there you go, there's a 10/10 body. It didn't do the damage like a Devastator, but now I've got Devastator on one side, I've got 97th Legion on the other side. Where are you going to go? And it was really good. So, Alex, how much was that card?
97th Legion is a whopping 10 cents right now on TCG Player because it's uncommon.
Yep. And the best part about it is because it's an Imperial Trooper, it worked with Veers. So when I was running it in my Palpatine deck, ironically enough, with Veers would automatically boost it another one. So it basically, if I dropped it and you didn't kill it, I was swinging into your base, for 8 to 10 damage. And if you did kill it, whatever you swung in with is pretty much dying, like every time. So Power of the Dark Side does suck against it, though. I did not like when somebody Power of the Dark Sided it. But.
Or Force Lightning is hilarious because you just auto kill it for one resource, but like no one runs Force Lightning. Actually, a local of mine has 97th Legion in his Tarkin deck, and that got out of control because that thing was like a 14/14. I'm like, man, this is really, really hard to out. Like this is just really in my way.
Yep. All right, so Elliot, we'll let you go next. Which card did you pick, and why did you pick it as a replacement for for Vader?
Yeah, so both of y'all had great picks. I mean, Maul, I think right now is in my number one spot for just slotting in that pick. Like, if you can't get a Vader, try to get a Maul. And I went a little bit spicy, and we're going over to the red side with a pre-Vizsla. So he comes in, is a 8 attack, 7 health, Mandalorian Trooper, and with the spicy text, I told you it's going to get nice and hot up in here. We have when played and on attack, you may pay the cost of an upgrade attached to another non-vehicle unit. If you do, take control of that upgrade and attach it to this unit. If it can attach to this unit, defeat it instead. So for 7 resources. Comes in, it's got the same size butt as Vader with that 7 health. It's got more attack than Maul and Vader with that 8, which is incredible for a 7 drop. And also, if your opponent has any experience or any shields, it can just yoink those on for free. And then Alex was mentioning earlier just about how, Luke's lightsaber, that'll be nice. Just you can kind of pilfer your opponent's upgrades, especially if they're running any a Bo-Katan deck, any really upgrade heavy. A lot of the heroes definitely go towards upgrades, and I feel like Pre can just kind of take them and use them to your advantage. So I think, and at a whopping 39 cents, buy as many as you can. I'm going to get a stack full, at least 100 of them. So we'll do a planned buyout of Pre-Vizsla right now.
So you get that artificial scarcity going.
So
part of the market.
I have a quick question to see if this was played right. So if you use timely intervention and ambush this guy in for 8, right? And he can immediately steal that shield before he does his on attack, correct? Before he does his ambush attack. So
yeah, with the when played, and then if there was an additional thing, it would trigger both times with timely intervention as well. I believe.
Like you could always steal someone's shield when you're attacking them because it's on attack.
Okay, but what I did. So here's how it came down. I only got this off once, but I timely intervention. I still lost the game, but I timely intervention to Pre-Vizsla, and they had a shielded Cad Bane from the the whole bounty the bounty hunter type thing, and the timeless pursuit. There you go. I think that's
relentless pursuit.
Relentless pursuit. Thank you. And so I timely intervention this Pre-Vizsla in, stole the shield that was on him, attacked Cad Bane to kill Cad Bane, dumping it all onto the shield, and then they had somebody else had like an experience token, and I just stole that and I used it afterwards. But I guess I could have done it at first. I didn't know. I didn't think about that.
You have to do it at first because it's on attack.
All right. Well, then there you go. So I misplayed that. It wouldn't have mattered. It would just been a free experience token anyway. CAD was dead. So like,
CAD has 8 health, so you're killing it regardless.
Yeah,
but one played, steal CAD Bane's shield, ambush into CAD on attack, steal someone else's experience.
Yeah, crazy. That's just crazy. Like, I don't know how often that happened. I mean, again, I had 3 timely interventions in one of my pre-releases, but only one pre-visit, and it just happened to have it at the same time, so it worked out very well for me. I did lose very quickly after that, though, so it didn't matter. Like, they had one of those stupid lurking TIE Phantoms on the other side of the board, so it was inconsequential, I think, at that point, but still, it was a fun move to do. So, all right, the next choice, JJ, you had mentioned Mr. Palpatine there.
Yeah, absolutely. So on TCG Player, he's coming in at 69 cents for the base. 79 cents for the base card for Palpatine. Coming in at 8 costs. Yes, it is one more cost than Vader. But the beauty of this particular card is just when you play him, he gets to deal 6 damage divided amongst all the different enemy units on there. So if you have a lot of cheap or low health units that are on the board opposed to you, you can divide it out, spread out that damage, maybe take out a few shields along the way, and that really helps control the board pretty much equally, I would say, in my opinion, to Vader when Palpatine gets deployed out there. And if you have any other mechanics to help you bounce him back and replay him again, that's even better. So he can offer a lot of control as soon as he comes out there. He's not taking any damage from like an ambush, although you could ambush him if you want to really soften up a target and then throw 6 damage into a unit or a leader. Palpatine just has a lot of great utility for what he can do at 8.
I love Palpatine unit so much. That thing has bailed me out of so many games.
Yeah.
Especially because he comes out the same turn as Leader Palpatine, so you could just feel like that big unit takes 1 damage. Everything else I'm just nuking off the board. Guess which one I'm going to steal.
The best is when you steal their home ones.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, I love playing this Palp, especially with Palpatine Returns after somebody kills him, and then you just bring him up and redo everything again. Oh man, it's just so good.
The flavor alone. The only complaint I have about him is 6/6, especially with set 2. He's really squishy now. So you just mostly play him for that 6 damage and like the built-in overwhelming barrage essentially that he has on play is great, but I've found, especially recently, he's more of just he's more of a beefed up open fire than an actual. I mean, he's a credible threat at 6/6, but a lot of people just can get him off the board really quickly.
I have done like some timely intervention shenanigans with Emperor Palpatine, and that is just it's not okay.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it costs 9, so like it's definitely later. But like you just drop them down, and just whatever you're gonna ambush, you can just put damage into down to like 1 because of the overwhelm, and just do 5 to their pace and kill like 3 other units. It's great.
And with the Piet too, if you run the Piet and him, it's great once you get him out. Then you can do some shenanigans that way.
All right, and the last card that we had as kind of a replacement, Alex, was Mercenary Company. Tell us why you picked that as an alternative.
Yeah, it's just the 6 cost green 5/5 ambush overwhelm. It is 1 cheaper than Vader, and like it's still ambushing the same amount for Vader, and it's got overwhelm. It also costs literally 1 cent because anyone you'll find that has these will just give you stacks of them because it's set 1 and 2, so everyone's got like piles and piles of these things. But it's just like you get the overwhelm, you get the ambush. It's cheaper. It's more like super budget Vader. I mean, I still try to go with Maul, but even if you don't have any Mauls, Mercenary Company is not bad at all.
Yeah, and it comes in at 1 cost cheaper than Maul does too, so. The overwhelm on it actually makes it very interesting because Vader does not have overwhelm. So I've a couple of times played Vader and it ambushes in, and you're like, it sucks because I wish I would have been able to ambush in against a Sentinel with something that had overwhelm, but It is what it is. So I like it. So anyway, that's too much man section or segment, and we will definitely come back. We'll do this again. We probably won't do it every week, but we'll do it every other week or something like that. It's kind of a fun thing. And if you have a recommendation, or you're like, hey, there's this card and I don't know what's a good replacement for it, you can message us on Discord, or you can send us an email at planingphasesyndicate@gmail.com. We'll happily take your suggestions. Say, hey, we'll find this card. And even if it's a tricky card like Snoke, for example, though Snoke's not super expensive, but Snoke, for example, is still a card that we could do, and he has such a very unique ability. That's going to be just a challenge in of itself. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, same thing with like Vader, because it's a lot of the really good things with Vader is him pulling another unit out.
Yes,
there's been so many times where I'm like, cool, I pulled out Veers, and now I can actually swing in for 6 and actually kill the thing I'm going at, or mostly pull out like cell block cards or phase 3 troopers or whatever, just the sentinel units.
Fair enough. All right, so that being said, now let's get to the meat of the episode. So we brought Elliot on because we wanted to talk about Palpatine, and especially Red Palpatine. Elliot, you went 5-2, correct, at GenCon. It was day 2, I believe.
It was day 3, Saturday, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, went 5-2. It was a very long day. 7 rounds playing Star Wars that much, and before I had gone Palpatine, I was mostly just Sabine or just aggro decks, and I'd get done with matches in 20 minutes and then go and just drink soda or shop at whatever place I was doing a showdown at. And here at Gen Con, I think I had 3 out of my 7 games go 2 time, which is just grueling. And so one of those losses was a tie, which is always dreaded, especially the way that Unlimited does things, is double loss for both opponents or for both players. And that never feels good. That was, it ended up being that I played against, so starting off, I'm just trying to recreate the day, played against Green Han deck to start things off, and defeated him. Then I went up against New Han Yellow, and that was my first loss. I absolutely got destroyed by the discard 2. Is that Pillage?
Yeah, Pillage. It's rough.
Yeah, I got pillaged. I got pillaged twice in a row on turns 5 and 6, which just ended the game because Palpatine loves his gas, and when he doesn't have any gas, that's difficult. And the deck that I was running didn't have any smuggle in it. There is some potential smuggles, especially for Palpatine Green. Palpatine Red, it's some things that I've looked at, but nothing too much. Round 3, I went into, and I believe it was against Vader Green. That one was hilarious because I run Crate Dragon. This Vader player was also running Crate Dragon. And so in the game, 3 Crate Dragons were played in total. I played a Crate Dragon. It was killed. He played a Crate Dragon. It was killed. And then he played the 3rd Crate Dragon, and he took game 2, went into game 3, and I was able to eke it out. And then I faced 2 Kira decks. The first Kira deck was piloted by KTOD Matty. Shout out to him. Phenomenal player. Great. And that's the one that went into time. I looked at him at the very end, and I was like, you got to win this, man. So even though it was at time, and instead of giving us both losses, we decided he'd take the win there. So then I went on to face, right after that, another Kira deck, and was able to redeem myself. I think the 2 hardest matchups for Vader are kind of the aggro if they get a really good start, and control if they can really punch you down. So once you have those 2 kind of in the middle, Palpatine Palp really can flourish against both of those, or he can flounder against both of those. It really depends on the match and the plays. All of my opponents that day were very well played. It was a great time. I think I went out. There was so that's 6, and then my 7th, I think it was a Bo-Katan deck that I faced. Bo-Katan Blue. And that one went to game 3. I got it. Ended up 5-2 for the day. Felt really good. There's actually, I think 21st is what I ended up placing. There was there's a green Palpatine that also did very well that day. And then other than that, I thankfully didn't have the matchup of Boba Yellow. That can be hit or miss. And a lot of Hans just floating around. So I got some interesting things, and it was neat because, I mean, besides the 2 Kiras, I think the meta was very healthy. Like, everybody is playing different decks right now. It's a great age. It's a new card game, so there is some winning combinations, but there's no the best deck, I think. So and so some guy can just take a deck that I think was very strong in set 1, and I only changed out I think there's 8 cards from the new set, so less than a fifth of my entire deck is from the new set, I guess plus sideboard, and was able to go and play and be competitive and go 5-2. So really great day, a lot of great players, and I think I'm still a little exhausted from from the time there.
Fair enough. So, yeah, I think the big thing, right, is you were able to play for that day, and you win 5-2. So that's a very admirable record. I did notice, yes, you had almost no new cards in there, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, and then we're going to talk a little bit about play lanes and kind of into each of the different matchups. Because I think Alex and I have both had different experiences with Palpatine Red in terms of Alex thinks Sabine ZZ always wins a Sabine match, right? I lose more aggro, but I win more of the control type matches that I play against. And so I think that's kind of some of the lanes that we'll talk about here in a few minutes. But what I wanted to do before we get into it, right, is I want to talk a little bit about we'll call it the closest thing to our original deck that we had. I think there was a little bit of differences. Alex had some Calluses in there, whereas I think I threw the Viper Probe Droids in there. But essentially, this was our set 1 deck is what this was. And this is we'll just put it this way. This was within 42 cards of what Alex and I both have been playing most of the time throughout there. I initially went with some bombing runs in the sideboard because my meta over on the west side is aggro. It seems like nothing but aggro half the time, it feels like. So bombing run saved me more times than I thought it would. And it's funny because the local actually told me to run that against him. So after I did that, I was like, oh, okay, well, this works out so much better.
Bombing runs are pretty legit.
Yeah.
that bailed me out a couple games.
And we were also on V-Wings, right? And not a lot of people were on V-Wings, especially in the Palpatine builds, because people were running TIE fighters and stuff like that. And that was kind of a special card. I would mulligan specifically for that card because I didn't have to kill that unit and I could get a free draw. And then the next turn I could kill the unit and then play another card. And it helped build that card draw up unless I was playing Sabine. It worked out very, very well to be able to have any mid-range deck. I then had so many cards. And I think we're gonna have to talk about this because pillage is a thing, right? And I noticed in your deck you had pillage, ironically enough. Did you have? Maybe you didn't have pillage. I don't know.
Oh no, I thought about sideboarding it, but I never actually ended up with it. But I know some people have been running pillage in Palp Red.
And I think we got to talk about that because personally, I'm not 100% sold on that card with this deck for the pure fact that this deck, the idea behind this deck is controlling and then overwhelming. And it can do it earlier than a lot of some of the bluer decks because Red has a lot more tools to cheaper aggro than other stuff. So traditionally, this is not an aggro deck, but it becomes an aggro deck like towards the end of the thing, or it could be ultra control-y, right? Like we could just sit here and say we're going to control. So I don't know, Alex, do you want to run through? You want to run through the original list real quick, just so that we have it.
The original one, okay.
Run through this list, and then you can
set one, right?
Yes, our set one.
Yeah,
Just real quick.
I gotcha. So this set one, we have triple Stormtrooper, triple V-Wing, double Ozzel, so fun. Triple Force Choke, triple Viper Probe, triple Seasoned Shore Trooper, triple Emperor's Royal Guard, triple Open Fire, double Veers, triple Super Laser Tech, double Disabling Fang Fighter, triple Cell Block Guard, double Interceptor, triple Overwhelming Barrage, triple Traitorous, triple Raider, triple Vader, triple Palpatine, and the one Devastator. In the side, we have a restock against Mill. You got double Power Failure against some Jared Voltron decks that are running around at that time. You got a third Veers, a third Interceptor for more space control, very, very poignant against Sabine. Double Bombing Run, one Relentless, and a Devastator.
Yep. And then the other cards that we had played around with that you had been running was the Callus, Agent Callus, correct?
Yeah, my deck had a double Devastator and double Callus instead of triple Viper Probe.
Yeah. And so it's very similar, and I won't lie and say like this is the exact ones that we ran every single time, but this is kind of like this was our base level, right? And your opening turns, you're looking for your V-Wings, you're looking for your Stormtroopers. I was looking for my probe droids because it helped me know what they, specifically wanted, right? But that's kind of like this was the original deck. And then this deck, this one is Elliot's version. This is what you took to GenCon, correct?
Yes, this is what I took to GenCon, and I'll should I just go through it real quick?
Yeah. Yep. Let's give everybody a baseline, and then we could kind of start talking about upgrades, play lines, different things like that.
Yeah, so 3 Piets, 3 Lorens, 3 Force Chokes, 3 Seasoned Shore Troopers, 3 Emperor's Royal Guard, which is, in my opinion, either the best or tied for the best 3-drop in the game next to Boba Fett. But Emperor's Royal Guard is not unique, so you can run 3 of them. Asterisk with... You have to have Emperor Palpatine for it to be the best 3-drop in the game so far. 3 resupplies, 3 open fires, 1 of the General Veers just for Vader to try to tech it up, kind of like Alex was saying, just in case you want to have Vader hit something for 6. I was running 2 of the Dark Troopers, 3 of the Super Laser Techs, 3 of the Black Sun Starfighters. Sorry, yep. I can't quite read. Yep. I forget the name of that card. 3 Overwhelming Barrages, 3 Traitorous, 3 of the Relentless Raiders, 3 Vaders, 3 Reinforcement Walkers, 3 Palpatines, and 2 Crate Dragons. So you got, it really breaks down into that early game package, ramp, a little more control-y damage cards, and then your nice late game package where Palp can just come out and you draw it and you just slam some big threats on the table, or things that actually can save you with that Reinforcement Walker, that Palpatine to help clear the board right there.
Awesome. So JJ, we've talked a lot. We haven't given the guy that doesn't play Palp all the time a chance to talk, right? And so I think what's necessary is like JJ's very good at being able to give the opposite perspective, right? Because we have somebody on here that doesn't play control all the time, and like I'm assuming if you play a lot of Elliot, if you're playing this, you probably play a lot more of a control style than an aggro style anyway. And unfortunately, Alex and I both fit into that. I'm what you would call the unlimited slut. I'll play whatever wins for the most part if I want to win something, but mainly I'm a control player. I prefer control over other stuff, but I will play. I won't lie and say I got finals with Boba Yellow. So like I did do that. Like that was the one showdown I didn't run Pelpin. So So JJ, let's go back to JJ. What is your like? So when you see this and you sit down across from this and you talk about, I'm glad like this deck has a few one-offs in it, right? Like not as many as you like to have, but this deck has a few one-offs. So when you sit down and you're looking at like a Palp, what is your immediate thoughts? Like what are you looking at? What are you saying? Okay, hey, hold on. I don't like this, or I know they're going to play this. What is your thoughts when you sit down against a Palp player?
So the most notable thing about this is that Palp tends to want to build up very quickly, right? Palp has a very high deploy cost for his leader. He needs to get to up to 8 resources. So typically you're going to be seeing a lot of ramp up there between super laser techs and resupply. That also indicates to me that there's also going to be a lot of more high costing units that are going to come out there. So when I'm sitting across a Palp list, I know that any of my event cards that can one-shot some of these higher cost cards immediately when they're deployed is going to be a huge boon for me to get out as soon as possible. If I have any discard effects like Pillage, for instance, I definitely want to save that more towards the mid-game once you start reaching the probably the 5th or 6th round, as that's when you're likely to have the Palp player hold on to a Vader or a Palpatine or a Krayt Dragon to deploy at a later turn. And I'm trying to push the issue, right? The weakness for Palpatine that I felt was the early game, especially versus like aggro decks that like to attack really fast. Since Palpatine is spending a lot of their resources on trying to ramp up, you typically have either one or no units on the board if you're able to kill them off very quickly, and that's when you can push in the maximum amount of damage on there. So that's what I'm trying to do to try to win the game, is try to push in a lot of damage quickly. It definitely doesn't help when a Palp player has a lot of Sentinels on there, like the Emperor's Royal Guard, for instance, is a very big one, as well as the Phase 3 Dark Trooper. In my Palp deck, I actually also add in the Gamorrean Retainers, which is that cheap Sentinel unit, and then also the Escort Skiffs, which are great ambush units, just in case I have to, and I usually keep them as a sideboard just in case I have to deal with an aggro deck. That helps me have a little more offense early on, and partly slow down the aggro play there. But that's typically my main strategy when I'm trying to face off against a Palp deck.
Awesome. All right, so do you guys want to, let's move into, I guess, why don't we talk about some of the key cards to the deck, right? So I think we all run different versions of Palp, and I think that the ability to have that conversation will kind of naturally evolve. But I think there's some key cards that I've noticed between the 3 decks that we've all ran. I will not lie and say that the officials, and maybe that's how we'll start this, is the officials are variable and interchangeable. I only threw 4 of them on there because really the official is there for other reasons, but it's there also to empower your Emperor's Royal Guard. And the majority of those officials minus Veers are 2 cost, right? And so like in set 1, you could drop Admiral Ozzel turn 1, right? And the next thing you know is I could bring in a Royal Guard and ready if I have initiative, and it's got Sentinel. So I can now attack a smaller unit that can't kill it, and then force another unit for them to come in and attack. Against Sabine, it was, oh my gosh, like that was like super awesome against Sabine. If you had initiative and you could do it, or if they were not smart and they decided to ping you for the 1 damage, it's like, all right, well, I'm going to take the initiative and I'm going to bring in my Emperor's Royal Guard ready and force you to try to take it out instead of going to my base. So these are kind of the key cards, in my opinion. We could talk about other key cards, but these are some of the big key cards inside of this specific deck that we could talk about. And I like you mentioned, the Emperor's Royal Guard, right, is... I will agree with you. I think even without Palpatine, I think that is one of the better drops. Mm-hmm. If you are playing a lot of officials. So if you like, people weren't running it in Tarkin decks, but they were running all these stupid officials, and it's like, why would you just not run these guards? Like, you get Sentinel from it. Like, I know it's not a 3/5, but it's a Sentinel. Hey. It's a 3/4 Sentinel.
Even the scanning officer from the new set is a 2 drop they could put on early and then drop a Royal Guard later on.
Oh, we're gonna talk about that. Trust me.
Oh, yeah. We have scanning officer. Well, yeah, you should know by now. Scanning officer is one of my favorite cards besides tech, and we did a whole segment. Remember? So I picked the Royal Guard. I think that is one of the key cards to this deck is Emperor's Royal Guard with your chosen officials. And I don't know if any official is specifically better than any of the other ones. I think it kind of goes based on your playstyle. Like Piet has the advantage of being able to ambush in Palps, ambush in Ruthless Raiders. Ruthless Raiders are great to ambush in, actually, by the way. Especially if you could kill your Ruthless Raider when you ambush it in. So if you can kill a ship, and then you get to do the 4 damage to the base and 4 damage to other units. Yeah, that's nasty. I've killed a Bright Hope with one of those before by ambushing it in.
I killed an Avenger.
All right, well that's even better.
Nice.
Then there you go. That's even better.
Hell, it's got 8/8. You rush into there, do 2 to it, and then you crash in, and then you die, and you just give it the other 2.
Yep. It's great.
Dude, just a Holdo maneuver that right into it.
I know we don't have Holdo and we don't have her in yet, but it'll come, and I'm sure. Ozzel obviously gives you the ability to ready other units. Maybe not as effective now. Your Lauren allows you to heal. Veers just, I don't know. Veers and Emperor's Royal Guard are dirty in Pelp decks because it's now a 4/6 automatically.
Puts it right out of takedown range. Really frustrates my opponents.
Yeah, which is funny because a lot of times if people know what's coming, you could play your Veers, and then your next turn you're either playing your guards, or if you're at 6 resources, the very next thing you play is the Royal Guards, right? And like people, if they have to waste their takedown on that specifically, and it's like, all right, yeah, go ahead and use your takedown on my Veers. That's fine. Go ahead and do that. I don't care. So Alex, out of the key cards, what do you think is one of the next key cards in this for this deck?
I was going to still talk about the officials.
Oh, okay. All right.
Elliot, you're a lot of people are a fan of Piet, right? Like he's in a lot of Palpatine decks that I see. I personally don't like him in Palpatine decks. Is it you put him in there just because you have like Raiders and Walkers and Palpatines?
Yeah. So my Piet, how I usually look at him, I think he's good for 2 reasons. That 4 butt on that 2-drop, I think is a little bit tougher for people to get into. So I think early game, he's great for just peeling off a shield if you need him to, as a little bit of a lackey. I also think that he's great. So the ideal play is you're on 7 resources. That turn you use Vader to go grab a Piet if you have him in those 10 cards. And then hopefully then next turn. So I usually use them for the 8 drops, just to really kind of put that aggro nail in the coffin right there. So Reinforcement Walker with a Piet, if they have him out, then I'm healing 6 life right there. I've crawled back from the brink of death a lot of times with that. Palpatine, he's coming in with that Overwhelm Palpatine unit. And then if you really want to be dirty, you can use that Piet with the Overwhelm on the Crate Dragon and just swing in for 10, and I've just ended the game there a few times. So I think he has a lot of... I was once a Piet hater. I ran Ozzel over Piet all the time. I think that he has his uses. He has a spot where he's really bad. And that really bad spot is if it's not turn 1 or 2, and if it's not late game. That mid game, he just kind of is like, oh, great, I drew a Piet, and I might even sacrifice him to Palpatine to put a damage on something or to kill something. Because mid game, he flounders, but that early game, late game, I think... he has his uses early game, and he excels in late game.
Yeah, it's kind of like those middle turns is why I'm like, well, I like Scanning Officer because even in the middle turns, I still get a benefit, and also there's probably more like chances for people actually trying to do some sort of smuggle shenanigans. Mm-hmm. It's also hilarious turn 1 play if they happen to smuggle in a card because it just blanks their first turn if they don't have If they only had like 2 costing units and you hit one.
So I've been playing Green Palpatine, but I also include Scanning Officer and Green Palpatine, and I like to mulligan for that for my turn 1. Unless I have an amazing hand, I almost always mulligan for it. What I found, I've been playing against Han. It seems Han's like not blue Han. I'm sorry, old man Han. Either yellow or green is like the new like hot thing. Everybody wants to like run those decks now again. And I used to never have issues, except for now, like everybody's just Spark of Rebellion. Everybody like sees Palpatine, they just Spark of Rebellion to get rid of my scanning. And literally, like I had an overwhelming barrage. I had a Yularen, and I had 2 Sentinels, and or 1 Sentinel, and a scanning officer, and they literally dropped it and they got rid of it because obviously they got DJ, right? Like somebody had a tech or a DJ in their resource. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if Scanning Officer might be a little bit more versatile in the field now with like those Han decks, the yellow Han decks and the Boba decks kind of getting more popular.
Yeah.
And I mean, because I run 3 Scanning Officers in my sideboard.
Yeah.
And I think if you're running a main deck, like the very worst he can do is give you a glimpse of what the opponent's later game will be. It's about that information, especially if it's game 1 and you're like, oh, I'm playing against a Ray Blue and I revealed a Crate Dragon. I'm like, oh, okay. So I got to watch for that, I guess.
That's fair. Yeah.
I love it when we hit a tech, though.
Oh, yeah. No, the best, there's no other play against Han Yellow. The very best is I was playing. I was going second. Han Yellow starts, activates Han to get that 3rd resource, plays Scanning Officer, and I got all 3 of the resources. And I'm like, oh, that was it just feels good.
Rough. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nothing more satisfying than like blanking their first turn play and then next turn playing Royal Guards, and you're just like, cool. Go through that.
All right. How about another card? We could talk a little bit about the Ruthless Slater. We kind of already talked a little bit about it, so I mean, I don't know how much more there is to cover. I mean, that card for 6 costs, that card is just amazing. It's a 4/6 body in space, and if you can ambush it, great. If you can't ambush it, at least it sits there. And it does the 2 damage. I will tell you, you know how many times I've played that, done my damages, and then they use their units that have damage on them to kill one of my other units. So then I just have another resource and I Palpatine it, and then put a damage on whatever big thing that they waited till the end of the turn to play, like a Luke. Like, oh, you played a Luke. Thank you. I'm just gonna kill it, and then it does 2 more damage to their base. I've also played it where I've literally played one, and then I needed 2 more damage on their base, and they claimed because they had lethal, and so they just claimed ahead of time, and I had a second one in hand. I just played it down, and I was like, sorry, like, you don't have lethal anymore. I just won the game. No.
Yeah, there's been actually a bunch of times where I'm just like, I want to play this Ruthless Raider. I'm going to sack it off with Palpatine. And now I just won the game because I did 4 to your base. And then plus whatever, the forward Palpatine. Like, there's so many times that I've had exact lethal just by sacking off a Raider that I played earlier that turn.
Yep.
But the important thing is that it puts out damage out of your hand. And that's how you are able to steal things with Palpatine. Like, that's the huge thing about Palpatine is you need some form of out-of-hand damage a majority of the time just so you can take things that they're not expecting. And a Raider is a fantastic part of it.
Yeah. And then I threw Palpatine in there, but we already talked about Palpatine. I think Palpatine is... I think you have to run Palpatine in a Palp deck because I think that should just be an unlimited requirement. If you're going to run Palpatine, you got to run the effing unit,
I'm actually kind of considering only running 2 Palpatines right now in my Palpatine deck. I'm waffling between 2 and 3. It's just like, well, there's a bunch of other really good drops around that area. Like, reinforcement walkers are always really nice. Crate Dragons, 1 more. Do I want 3 Crate Dragons and 2 Palpatines, or do I want 3 Palpatines and 2 Crate Dragons? And I keep like waffling back and forth because Palpatine is very versatile, but man, Great Dragon's just end games right there. And that's what you want to do. Like, you want to hit that end game and just overwhelm them.
Yeah. I think the other, obviously Vader is a very necessary piece in this deck. I don't think you absolutely have to have him, but I will tell you it makes the game a lot easier, especially if you could pull out a Veers a Veers or a Sentinel. Like, I have done a flip churn with like Palp where I've killed a V-Wing, pulled Palp out, stole one of their units, and then dropped a Vader because I have all my resources, or almost all my resources, right? And then put a Sentinel out, and it's just like, what are you going to do now? Like, now I've got your big unit, I've got Help Out, I've got, Vader, who just killed something, and then now I've got a Sentinel, so...
Actually, Elliot, what is your opinion on V-Wings for Palpatine?
V-Wings. So I think in Palp Green, V-Wing is a very useful card. I think that when you go into Palp Red... it's because it's basically like your little kamikaze fighter. It comes in, it's a 1-drop, you draw a card, you sack it, you do ping a damage, draw a card again. I am a little, I think, and this will kind of get me into my next favorite key card to the deck, which is Force Choke. I think that, and this is my opinion, so please, I want to cause discourse. I think that in the Star Wars Unlimited, people think that card drawing is like the most powerful thing in the game. They go, oh, look, well, we'll make a 2-drop, potentially 1-drop that does 5 damage, but they get to draw a card. Or then you get into that new 2/3 bounty that's a 1-drop in space. Oh, but the bounty is they get to draw a card. If I had $1 for every overpowered unit that you get to draw a card from once it is defeated, I would have about $4 because they keep making them. And I think that they just, the Star Wars Unlimited designers, whatever like weight scale they have for designing cards, I think drawing a card is above a lot of things. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but I don't think it is as important of a trade-off as they think it is. And that's my hot take for today.
Oh yeah, I generally don't care about my opponent drawing cards unless I'm specifically running like a hand destruction kind of thing. But I like drawing cards with Palpatine.
That's it. And I love Palp's ability, the fishing. Like sometimes on turn, when I have 7 resources, if I'm feeling really like ballsy and I might be back, I might just use Palp to sack a perfectly good unit, like a seasoned shore trooper or Yularen, just to see that extra card, because then I can dip 2 more in my next turn just to see if I get that 8-drop. So I think that it can open up a lot of avenues with that, the V-Wing. And I think it is really good in green because I think just the play style of green really requires, double green really requires you to have that a big robust hand. And I think double green, especially with the enterprising lackeys, is a lot more resistant to the hand destruction decks with those pillages and the force throws too.
Yeah, I think to go back to your hot take, which I'm not actually in disagreement with you, because that seems to be like a big, like those 1-drop red black galvanizing people or whatever, that basically is like it's a
the Guavian antagonizer.
There you go. Yeah, what did I call it?
There you go.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, those ones are great.
Yeah, and like they get to draw a card. Like I don't care either. Force Choke's only downside is I can't kill the air with it. Like I really wish like I could kill the air with it. But the best part about that, whole thing is that it comes from, I believe, the Destiny days, right? And I don't know if you play Destiny at all, Elliot, but Destiny lets you get resources every round that's different than how the resource accommodation is here, right? And drawing a card in Destiny was a lot more impactful than it is now. Like when we were in Destiny, drawing a card was like, holy crap, because like you drew up a new hand every turn, so you could draw that extra card. You knew you're getting an extra card and you didn't care, right? And you could use it to burn it for a reroll. And so that was the big thing. Like in Destiny, you could discard a card to reroll, and I can't remember the guy's name was Chip. I wish that guy played Unlimited. This guy had a podcast called Discard to Reroll, which is like the best name for a podcast in my opinion, like for Destiny, hands down. But they would anyway, so that's why like drawing a card in Destiny was really big, because it gave you that extra reroll. So if you rolled something really crappy, like, and I think about it, like we played X-Wing, like, you know how many times I would like to be able to reroll my my dice more than one time. That would be really awesome. Like, oh, I just rolled 4 blanks and I don't have heroic. I better just go home for the day, you know. So Jeremy Swan is from Destiny, so like there is some holdover on card draw that comes from that. So
oh yeah, no, I played Destiny. I love Destiny. I love Unlimited even more. I like you said, so there was some day, I think it was because, you know, it was a few years ago, I was a little bit younger. I think I had some more hot rolls than I do nowadays. If it was Destiny now, I think I would just be rolling all just the red blanks just all the time.
Yeah, your Phasma, right? Remember when you got to roll your Phasma in and you got to roll your 2 trooper dice in on top of that? Yeah.
And then I discard and they just come up blank again. I'm like, oh man.
All right, let's keep moving.
Yes. Destiny sidebar, sorry.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about Force Choke, and that kind of goes into Open Fire. Open Fire is also a very good card. It hits both sides and it does 4 damage. So like it is actually over curve, in my opinion, like cost curve, because it does that extra damage that you're not getting from everything else. I actually wish we would have like a escalated Open Fire or something like that. That would be a 4 cost that would do 6 damage. That would be cooler. I need that to get rid of these stupid pose and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That we have nowadays. But I'll tell you what, you want to know what the funny thing is? I played against a Kira deck, and if I draw an Open Fire turn 1 against Kira, I just hold on to it. I just wait for, go ahead, flip Kira. Oh, Kira's dead. Like every time. Like I'm just gonna nuke her. Sorry. Like which is really sad. It's really sad.
And with the especially the dark sabers going around with the Sabines too, like I will sit on that Force Choke just because that turn 3 comes, they play Sabine and I Force Choke her, and then especially if it's a double red Sabine or like a red yellow Sabine, and they're not running too many Mandalorian units, and they're just sitting on that that dead dark saber, which just feels so good. It feels so good when you can one shot a leader with a card.
Yeah, I mean the Force Choke is huge just because it's again more out of hand damage. Yeah, you can't hit space or like reinforcement blockers. Just like Force Choke and Open Fire, and the next card we're gonna talk about. That's like it's just a lot of out of hands and everything. But yeah, the next card, I mean, shouldn't be a surprise and is probably played in every single green villain deck. But Overwhelming Barrage. I mean, especially late game, you just have high attack units. It also makes Palpatine even more scary, the unit himself. But there's been so many times where I'm like, I want to Overwhelming Barrage by Royal Guards. Just deal out 5 damage, have fun trying to get into this thing that's like a 5/7 now. And then even if it's like it took 5 damage and I just use Palpatine to get rid of him because he's a zombie anyways, like he's dying at the end of the turn, I might as well get a card and damage out of it. It's so silly.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think Overwhelming Barrage is probably the best card from last set, if not definitely top 3.
Oh yeah.
So like just having it in the deck and actually being effective, and because you get to choose the amount of damage spread across everything, you can do 1 damage to the really good unit that you're going to steal. It's so silly.
Yeah, and the last one is Super Laser Tech. Again, that's kind of like Overwhelming. We don't have to talk about it. Like it's essential ramp that allows you to just come out and kill things and then get a resource. It's basically pays for itself every time.
Super Laser Tech is incredible on the turn you have 7 resources, because your opponent does not see that coming. And they're like, okay, we have 1 more turn before he steals all the things. I drop Super Laser Tech, and I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do it myself and throw Palpatine and then kill someone. do 1 damage on whatever that they drop like a Luke or something that turns 7 resources. They just Palpatine's coming out now. That's not good.
Yep. Well, it's funny because it pays for itself if you sack it, right? Like it's like you spend the resource and then you get the resource back ready. I mean, like with Palp only, right? But like with Palp only, it's a free. You can kill it, draw a card. It's a free card draw. That's what that is. Like,
and 1 damage.
And one
card draw and 1 damage.
Yep. And then you ramp, and then you get to steal something. So in Palpatine, like to me, I feel like that card was designed specifically for Palp. All right, do you guys want to talk about game plan next and kind of talk about playing against the different decks, or do you want to talk about adding new cards to the set before we talk about the game plan?
We should probably talk about like what cards we put in there because that kind of leads into the game plans.
Yeah.
Right, like what you would do. Well, okay. So it's like it works too if you're just like, well, here's my control matchup. What cards am I going to add into it? Mm-hmm. But we'll go with the possible new cards. I think that's more interesting.
So I broke them out into 2 different slides. So we have units and we're going to have events. And I want to talk about them separately because I think, like, so for example, when we look at Elliot's deck, you're actually running a heavier event deck than what we had been running. Like, we were not running resupply, for example, at all. In our first go around. We literally, our ramp card was Super Laser Tech. That was it. And so, but people didn't also usually, like, most people didn't kill it for the most part, so it was always a free card draw. And most of the time, like, people were not like discarding our Super Laser Tech. They cared more about our Overwhelming Barrage. So if somebody used like a Spark of Hope, right? Like they were like, oh, here, or not Spark of Hope.
Spark of Rebellion.
Spark of Rebellion, right?
Rebellion, yeah.
Like that, they cared about the Overwhelming Barrage in my hand. They did not care about my Super Laser Tech, which just made my choice easier. I was like, okay, I was going to play Overwhelming Barrage, but now I'm going to play this and I'm going to sack it and I'm going to do a damage and I'm going to ramp faster. So anyway, these are the reason I want to talk about them separately, long story short, is because I think they impact the deck differently. And I think it's important that we talk about why we include or don't include. And so I'm going to not lie and say that there's a specific legendary on here that we have never thought about running in this deck, but it is a new card that does fit the mold and could be something that we could run in the deck. But obviously it's there for a discussion piece. It's not there because we agree on it. So I didn't put cards in here that I want specifically all the time. These are just the cards that I felt had a possibility to replace other cards in the deck. And that's kind of how I want to talk about this a little bit, right? So we can start with Scanning Officer. So I think all of us agree Scanning Officer we agree with, right? Like that seems like we
talk about it.
a simple yes. We want this, whether it's a sideboard or main deck.
Giving the current meta, like if people go away from Smuggle, then it definitely loses its luster. But as it currently stands, with all the Hans are at, like, Han is the new kid on the block, and Scanning Officer just can wreck a Han.
Yeah, I mean, as we were saying earlier, Scanning Officer being an official and a 2-drop with also some upside occasionally is very nice.
Yeah. And this card you don't hate as much if you play later turn either. If you need it with your Royal Guards, right? So being able to play that with the Royal Guards, being able to play it later, even get a resource later in a turn is just so imperative. Like, I got rid of one of your ready resources. How do you like them apples? And I'll tell you, if you play Twin Suns, you should always put that in every green aspect. You just play it, and you should mulligan for it for turn 1 because it will literally piss one person off every time. It's guaranteed to piss someone off. The next one is the Phase 3 Dark Trooper. Originally, we had kind of slated that as a replacement for Cell Block Guard. I don't see why you wouldn't personally replace this for Cell Block Guard. It has the same keywords, except for now it's got droid, which I don't know. That doesn't really matter. That doesn't matter, I don't think. But I don't know why you just wouldn't replace this for Cell Block Guard, even though I will be honest and tell you this is not my Sentinel of choice. It's just my backup Sentinel.
Mm-hmm. Now, I got to say, as a person who actually ran this Dark Trooper as part of my deck, I absolutely love combining it with the Outline Tag Vanguard, which is one of the cards that we have on here, mainly because it is a unit that can benefit from getting that experience when it's played there. So now it becomes a 4/4 Sentinel. And if you start throwing it in at some of the cheaper or lower attack units, you'll start seeing like R2D2 out there or C3PO that you can kill one shot and only take 1 damage in return. You're gaining more experience on that phase trooper and making it stronger and becoming more of a bigger deal for your opponent to try to take out. So that's definitely a great combo that I like to add into my pop deck for that. The Outline tie with the the Dark Trooper.
And it's actually like a decent thing to ambush too if we have timely intervention against like some smaller units, maybe like 1 attack units, like your Bazines and whatnot. Just ambush it out and just like kill it, and now you have an experience, and you're just like, now I hit back for 4, and I'm Sentinel, have fun.
Oh yeah, and I love also I love that it's a whole new card in and of itself, because then if you really wanted to, you could run 3 Royal Guards, 3 Phase 2 Dark Troopers, and 3 Prison Guards, and have which would be insane as a lockdown deck, but against aggro without Saboteur, they just have you just have answers that you just keep playing. I wouldn't personally run it, but it's an option.
All right, the next one that I put on here is Salacious Crumb, because I kind of feel that at least 2 of us are on board with this being a minimum of a 2 of in the deck, and possibly the rest of us. I won't speak for Alex, because Alex, I didn't get a list from him for his Pup Red, so I don't know if he would put this in there. But I feel Salacious Crumb, at least as of 2 of, is like really, really, really good in this deck personally, and I like it for the out of hand heal and the out-of-hand damage. And I won't lie and just say, I like against Han Blue, right? You can play this against Han Blue. You could drop it, you get to claim, then you get to pick it up, and you get to throw out their damage on there. So what are those heroic renegades or whatever that people were running for a little while? The one where you could play on turn 1 or whatever and like put the damage on. Like, oh, I picked my Salacious Crumb up and your unit's dead now. Thank you. Like, and I didn't even waste the card to do it, really, And then I get to heal a second time if you did damage to me. So, I don't know. What do we think about Salacious Crumb? Yes, no, maybe?
Oh, yes. I love him in Palpatine decks.
Oh, okay. Unanimous!
He's fun. I really like him with Yularen, too, with that double heal, if you can drop him. That just feels so good. And especially if you're running Mauls or other Underworld things, he just makes a great punching bag for Maul to come out and just... he gets obliterated. And then last point on Salacious, I think in the upcoming set, this is just total speculation, but with a lot of 1 drops, I think that anything with 1 health, tokens potentially with the droids, I think that he has a lot of potential just to help pick things off. And with Palpatine, he helps select your target for that takeover.
I mean, it's the whole I can pick them back up into my hand and do a 1 damage to a ground unit. Like that's your out of hand damage essentially already. So that it just everything about it synergizes with Palpatine, and it's fantastic. And I don't feel too bad just like sacking him off with Palpatine if need to be.
Mm-hmm. Or if somebody kills it instead, and you're like, oh well. That was 5 damage that I didn't have to see in my base.
You know how fun it is to, like, first turn Salacious Crumb, opponent drops. Your opponent's just like, no, that's bad. And they drop, like, a Greedo or a Stormtrooper. And you're just like, great, cool. That thing's dead.
And that's a free card.
Yeah.
I tend to see a lot of Power of the Dark Sides thrown at my Salacious Crumbs.
What? Really? That's hilarious.
Yes.
He is subtext annoying pet for a reason.
All right. The next one I threw on there was a hunting neck suit, right? And the reason I say this is because it on its face value doesn't have it's a 4/4 for 4. But if you're running a heavier red set, you would get a +2 raid with it, right? I don't know if that's good or not. That was just one of the cards I felt could be possibly in contender. What do we think about hunting Nexu? Is that is it just not good enough in the curve value for Palpatine? I mean, you don't want to sack it if you play it, so.
Right, yeah, I wouldn't put this in my Palpatine deck. I usually try to run something like a control late game Palpatine style deck without relying on having something on the board. I mean, obviously the Royal Guards are an exception, but like I don't like having, it's like, well, if you control another red unit, you get this benefit, because I'm like, half the time I'm just have an empty board. Like that's kind of what I'm going for.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my take on it. I mean, I'm sure you guys might have something different.
No, I kind of agree. I think that yes, it does have the potential to be a 6 attack for health when you're putting an attack on there. But beyond that, it is a strong card in its own, but it doesn't feel like it fits well with the overall dynamic for what the deck can do, unless you're adding on additional cards to help it reach its potential, like a timely intervention or ambushing it out with Vader. Actually, no, you can't do Vader. But yeah, without like a timely intervention, it just feels like you're spending extra resources to get it out in order for it to be very effective right off the bat. Whereas you get a lot more value with some of the other cards that are available. So I want to make hunting Nexu work, but it just doesn't feel like it fits in a pop deck for me.
Fair enough. Then let's move on to IG-11. We originally had slated IG-11 to be an auto include in Palpatine, but I see Elliot doesn't have IG-11 in there, and I have played a little bit with it, and it is a very, like, now that nobody's capturing anything, like, it's a little bit less, I feel, effective, but it is still a 6/5 body. And it does still have an on attack. So you like, this is easily, in my opinion, above the curve for what it's supposed to be, right? Because you're on attack, you may deal 3 damage to a damaged ground unit. So you could Palp, you can use Salacious Scrum, you can then play this stupid IG-11 with timely intervention. There's like so many different things that you can do. I wonder if we're kind of missing out on IG-11, or did Alex and I just kind of get more excited than we should have been for this unit?
I mean, I think it's like a consideration with something like Vader, where it's easier to spread more damage around. And like the stat line's fine. It's just 5. The 5 cost cards for me in Palpatine are just like borderline non-existent. It's like I want the Traitorous and the Overwhelming Barrage, and that's already enough for the 5 curve for me. That's kind of the problem with this.
Well, you see, for me, I think this fits very well in a Palp deck, and the reason being is that as a Palp player, you're already looking to damage opposing units to potentially take over with Palp. Since you're able, especially if you're able to ambush this in with a timely intervention, being able to deal 3 damage to a damaged ground unit already can help you potentially take out 2 units while you're attacking with IG-11. So just the potential just to swing the board in your direction with that particular part of its ability is very, very strong. And you're already trying to ping units already with Palp's ability, just deal 1 damage to a unit. Now you got IG-11 that could potentially swing in and do additional damages, or same thing with Salacious Crumb. You activate its ability to ping a unit with a damage, and then IG-11 comes in, does that damage. There's you're almost always have a target of opportunity with IG-11 in a Palp deck. So I think that for me, I've found it to be invaluable. I've pretty much included it in every single iteration of my red Palp decks.
Sure.
I think he has a lot of potential. If you, I would put him more in, like, if you're making either a Bosk yellow or like a Cad Bane red type of deck. I think that the Bounty Hunter keyword can definitely help out with other bounty hunters, and then especially if you're running some sort of package that you yourself can capture IG, because I don't think you can necessarily count on your opponent to capture IG. But if you like Relentless Pursuit, Does that work on your own units?
Oh, I don't think so.
I don't
but
think so.
I can double check.
Would be amazing.
I really don't think it does, but
well,
nope. Choose a friendly unit that captures an enemy, non-leader.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm just trying to think of any because a lot of the captures I think potentially later, especially if you can capture him yourself and just have a built-in bombing run with him after he comes out, swings a couple turns, and then he can really just clear a board. And especially, I mean, I might just be envisioning Clone Wars like a board full of token troopers or a board full of token droids, but the idea of just having him get captured and just blow up everybody just seems great.
Someone actually did capture them in a pre-release I went to. They just like wiped their board. And then another one attempted to capture it, and then that was like their only unit, so it didn't do anything. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, you just auto-defeated it. That's not good. That's not what I wanted. That's 6 damage I needed. So,
all right.
I guess it depends if you need like huge damage or not in the middle of your Palp deck.
Yeah, I feel like the curve cost for this is good. I've had a hard time when I hit 5 resources wanting to play just that unit. That's what I found. And then I found once I get to the higher cost, like when I have more than 5 resources, I found I have better things to play typically. And that's the thing I think that sucks, is because where our Palp decks sit is when you hit the turn 4, when you have the 5 resources, or even a turn 3, it's just not as good. That 5, if it had 1 more health, I think it would be a different discussion, right? 1 more health makes it live a little bit longer. But this like succumbs to a Poe. This succumbs to a frickin' Wrecker, for Christ's sake. I don't know. The next
everything dies to a Wrecker, but
yeah, okay, fair enough. But the next one I have is Kylo Ren. Because Kylo Ren's a 7/7, right? And Kylo Ren gives +2 if it's a non-unit, but it just gives +2 no matter what. And then you give it the experience token if it's a non-villainy unit, right? So like, I have seen it used like scanning officer, give an experience token to the scanning officer, yada yada yada. But for the most part, like, it just is a big body. But I see, Alex, you were not running that either. Because really it does, like, it is a 6 resource, but it does not hold up to like a Vader, right? Like, I just would rather have Vader over a Kylo unit. And we don't have automatic ambush unless you're running timely intervention specifically, right? And then you have to have a specific way to get timely intervention with Kylo in the same hand, or you got to pay 9 resources to pull it out of your graveyard or out of your resources. So what do we feel about Kylo?
Kylo is fantastic if you have ECL, which you don't with Palpatine, because he's the green aspect there. So it's just like, I mean, 6/7 is nice, especially because you usually just give the +2 attack bonus to himself, because there's kind of no reason not to unless you're specifically giving out experience tokens. So he swings in for 8, which is huge at that time. It's just I'd rather have other things, honestly. Like it's I'm not my heavy hitters are like Devastators, right? And like the Palpatines, not, well, I have Kylo halfway through the game kind of thing. But I can see why he'd be very useful, especially with timely interventions. Very good with him.
Oh yeah, I think he also has a neat little built-in fun thing for Palp decks. I don't run any of him. I did consider running him. I don't know. I think it just feels like he's just like, even though he's a 6-drop, it's kind of like, well, in a couple turns or next turn, if you have super laser tech, I'm going to be I'm going to have 8 drops that I can that I'm saving kind of that space in my deck for. But he does have that really neat, because half the time, and I love some of the crazy interactions that you get with Palpatine captures, but he can help beef up that Luke that you grab from someone else, or that unit Han from someone else. And I think that just has some potential fun, but I think he's definitely not an auto include. I'm not sure if I were to run him, if I'd run 3 of them, but I could see him kind of fit into the curve as like a 2 include potentially there.
Fair enough. Next is Crate Dragon. I feel that's an auto include. Like I don't know. Like to me, Crate Dragon is just a bonkers card. I don't understand. I don't know. That card is just crazy to me.
Yeah. How it came in costed less than some of these Star Destroyers, I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean it's Crate Dragon, right? Like you want, like, the whole purpose of this deck is to go to the end game and then win in the end game, and there's very little cards, if not any cards, that are better in the closing out an end game than a Crate Dragon.
And Palpatine can get to 9 resources pretty quickly, so
yeah, and it's got Overwhelm, which is really nice.
Yep.
The real question is if you run 2 or 3 of them in a deck.
Ooh.
That's what you have to debate.
I feel it's a 2 and 1 in the sideboard for now. That's just me personally.
I kind of agree.
Man, sideboard spots are so tricky with Palpatine. Like, there's so many things you want to modulate in your deck with that.
Well, then I say just run 2. If it's me, I'm just running 2 then. And I only say that just I guess if you were to lower your Palpatine unit ratio, which I don't recommend you do because I bought a bunch of fancy Palpatine unit cards. I have a hyperfoil and 3 hyperspace, and now I have the new one that I spent $45 on too. Don't tell my wife. So if you're cutting a Palpatine, then maybe you can run 3, because Crate Dragon technically is a little bit better than Palpatine is. And really that one, like if you're going to lose between 8 and 9 resources, then I don't know what to tell you. Like Palpatine very rarely saves me. Usually if I'm playing against like an aggro deck and I can get to a Palp flip, I've won the game. Like the game's pretty much over at that point. And if I'm playing against like a heavy control deck, then I guess that extra Crate Dragon would probably be very useful. And we should probably do a video, but it has some insane interactions. Like Crate Dragon is just so timing specific. It's BS sometimes. Like it's a judge's nightmare to some extent.
How? It's super consistent. It just always happens when you play a card. There's no way of getting around that.
But when does it trigger? Does it get the trigger before an ambush? Does it not get the trigger before an ambush? I mean, I know the answer to it, but
so whoever's turn it is gets to decide the order.
Exactly.
But no matter what, even if it's still dead, it still triggers because you played a card. I'm actually leaning towards 3 Crate Dragons, 2 Palpatines in my deck, but I'm still waffling back and forth on that.
I do think this is a little bit of a sidebar, but I think Palpatine, the leader, is uniquely positioned to deal with Crate Dragon, and I think he's one of the only really good answers besides like Fell the Dragon or any just blue removal, just because I've had opponents like literally show me, like I haven't flipped Palp yet, and they just showed me their hand after the game, and they had a Crate Dragon, and they're like, I was too scared to play it the whole time. I was just waiting for you to steal something else. And Crate Dragon is like Palpatine's #1. He loves taming those giant worms, those sandworms. Just
the joke's on your opponent. I don't have to bring out Palpatine if I don't want to.
Exactly. Yep.
That was what I was saying, like why I picked up Palpatine in set 1 was because he's like one of the very few answers to late game units there is in this game. And now they have an even crazier late game unit, and he's still really, really good with it. Like you just take it and just play it. So
all right. The next one is Kylo's Silencer. It's a 2-cost 3, 2 body. I don't care about the action piece, but it's nice if you pillage. I had somebody pillage me, and I discarded that and just played it for my discard. So like, all right, screw you. I did that, but I don't hold them for pillage. I don't. To me, to me, the silencer is an easy. I don't know. Like, it's an easy. I would rather put this in here because I can still. It's only 2 costs. I can still sack it with Palpatine if I need to. It's very good at a trade. I don't know. To me, at least a 2 of in the deck seems logical.
Yeah, it's okay. It is actually pretty nice if you are running force throws in your deck because you can force throw it from your hand to do 2 damage, then play it out of the discard, which is nice. I just never find myself putting this in here just because like I don't need like a 2 cost 3 attack space unit generally. So it's always one of the cards that I'm just like I don't particularly need this. I'll cut it, but I also have V-Wings and love V-Wings, so that's taken up my space slot for 2. But I'm very, very minority opinion on that one.
All right. How about Maul? Maul, I don't think there's room for Maul, but I wish there was. I put Maul in my Palpatine green deck, but that's different, you know? I feel it fits into that Kylo niche, right? Like, it's good, but in Palpatine red, like, I don't know. I don't run a lot of Underworld units, so I don't have a way to dish off the damage like I do in my Jabba deck or even a Palp green deck. I don't know. Anybody else have a strong feeling? I'm very high on Maul personally, but I just don't. In a Jabba or in a Jabba, Jesus. In a Palp red, I just don't know if it fits.
Yeah, go for it, JJ.
I was gonna say, as a person who doesn't have a Vader, Maul is an absolutely great card in my opinion for this deck, just to help push it towards the end game. I'm not really concerned about having it kind of mesh well with Palp's ability at that point. I'm just there to try to wipe the board clean, and if my opponent can't answer it and he's still alive, I'm just swinging into the base, doing some massive damage along the way for it. So for me, it's definitely a card that I always put in there, and if I ended up getting some Vaders, I might consider still running 2 of them in my deck, but I would still have 3 Maul. It's easy.
I like your. I think he's the first best replacement for Vader, and I think he does have some unique situations with that overwhelm too. Because if you swing that 7 into something with like 1 health, you're doing 6 damage to base. Like that can win games right there. Like that ambush, and whenever ambush and overwhelm come together, you can be like, oh, I'm safe. Yeah, I'm living good. Oh, and I lost the game. Like. It can be decided right there, then and there. So I do like Maul. I agree completely with Palpatine Green. I'd put Maul in there, and I think that in some instances he's just as good as Vader. And if not, if you don't have any Vaders, I would absolutely run Mauls. Like he's great.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if I have Vader, I want the Vader because I'm pulling out a bunch of lower costing units that you typically run in Palpatine. But you know, if your meta starts leaning less from aggro and more towards like late game stuff, that extra 2 attack is really, really good. I can't like state that enough.
Yep, and it's got overwhelm, so
there's been times where I'm like, I swing in with Maul and do this damage, and they drop a Sentinel, and then I just play a second Maul from my hand and kill it, and then win off overwhelm. You can't really account for something like that. It's super useful.
Yeah. All right, the next one is a mercenary gunship for 2. Alex, we know you're probably out on that based on the fact that you said you don't have a 2 slot. I am not sold on it personally. I feel if we're gonna put a 2 cost in there, Kylo's Tie does the same thing. So why run that?
I love buying off my opponent's mercenary gunships. During with Emperor Palpatine, like, oh yeah, they can play as many of them as they want. Please come join my army.
I mean, I gotta agree with you, Chris. This is a card that I would not put in there mainly because I'm running 3 Outland Ties, and now I'm probably adding in V-Wings as well. So, I mean, there's got to be a much better reason for me to run other than getting one additional attack. I mean, it's kind of
your opponent can steal it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, granted, they have to spend 4 resources to flip it over for 2 costs. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's no reason to run these if you have a set of kind of those silencers, and even then, I think I'd still rather have the Outland Eyes, which I'm sure we're going to get to right now. But like, there's like 3 other spaceships I'd rather run at that slot. So,
yeah. I think I think, and if they steal it for 4, so's life. Like, but the majority of the time they're not stealing it for 4, and your Palp deck doesn't want to keep units on the board, right? Like, you're controlling the board when you have your lower cost units out. Like, I don't want to play this late game because if they have 8 resources, they could just steal it, and then they still have 4 resources to play something else, and that's no fun. And it's definitely no fun to have to ping it and take it back with Palp. Like, screw that. Like.
Right.
So let's go to the Outlander tie. This was one of the discussion points of replacing possibly the V-Wings. You don't get the same card draw, but it is the same cost. It is a 2/1, and it does provide an experience token to a 3 cost or less. And so, like, for example, Scanning Officer is really good with it. The Phase 3 Dark Trooper is very sadly good with it. It just isn't a Sentinel, right? And it works with Veers, so it has a lot of upsides. And it, like, if I sack it, I don't care, but it doesn't get you the card. That's the big thing, is you get an experience token instead of the card with it.
Mm-hmm. It also hits that Royal Guard, which just feels great. That 4/6.
Yeah, that's pretty nasty.
Yeah, so like my bigger thing like with that is because if you have the Veers in your deck, it goes very well with Veers and the Royal Guard, and really, like, it's not a turn 1 play in my opinion, and I hate seeing it in my hand turn 1, but I won't lie and say I played it turn 1 and just killed it the next turn to draw a card and ping a damage on something, especially if they have like a Greedo out, or I don't know, like Hoblin Enforcer or something dumb. I don't know. But like, really, like, I don't, like, to me, again, like, I think it's an okay card. I think in a Palp Green deck it shines. Like, I think in a Palp Green deck it does a little bit more because you can bump your Yularen up very quickly. But again, like, it's still a contender. It's, in my opinion, it's still a contender for that 2 cost slot.
Yeah. I think another part really depends on a lot of what people are playing. What does your space look like? When I run Palpatine, I run 2 space units, Ruthless Raider, and we'll talk about it in a second, but that Black Sun Starfighter. And I think that the Outland tie also really helps other space units, because even if you can get it off of, like, get that down and bump a V-Wing or something like that, it just helps makes a little more credible threats in the air. So it really just kind of depends on the synergy and where you're looking, in my opinion.
All right, now we move on to the Black Sun Starfighter. It's a 3/2 Sentinel. I don't know, like, I want to tell you it's an auto include. I don't know. You tell me.
Oh, you go first, JJ.
Sure. I would put this as a sideboard piece, and mainly because if I'm facing off against a Sabine, I'm gonna put this in there, like, hands down, easy. Just being able to deploy this at 3 costs helps you guard against those A-Wings, and your opponent has to go through it. So it just helps just give it that protection in space. It's probably one of the best, cheapest Sentinels in the game for space right now. So it's an auto include for me, or at least as a sideboard piece, if not a being piece, just depending on who I'm facing off with.
Heavy agree. Yeah, no, I love. I think it's it's a great, cheap, villainous Sentinels space slot. Because for me, I definitely can find a lot of weakness in like a Grand Moff yellow deck that just, or the Grand Moff space deck that just ramps up and just runs space. And before, I was just running the Ruthless Raiders and the TIE Fighters, not TIE Fighters, the Imperial Interceptors. And I feel like this is a nice slot. I feel like another bonus is that if they're hitting you in space, you can get Vader, and Vader can actually go and plop one of these down. Like having your bases covered, and I don't know, I can't think of any off the top of my head people who run Saboteur space units. So once they get that home one, it's just basically like delaying. It's delaying the inevitable. It's giving a body in space. It's making them having to swing into something that potentially Palp could steal itself. And I agree with JJ completely. Like auto include, if not main board, definitely sideboard. Just it's the savior of my space.
Yeah, it plugs a hole that Palpatine had, which was like, space can get kind of out of hand. Like you're relying on the interceptors to deal it with the Kiraxes here. It's just plop it down, and that's all you need. I would definitely run at least 2, just main deck, probably 3.
I actually like it better than that silencer. So if I'm keeping my interceptors, I'm probably keeping the Black Suns instead of the Kylo ship. But punishing 1, I threw that in there. I don't know. Like I don't know how much. There's nothing. We don't have bounties, so it doesn't ready. So really, it's just a 3/4. And again, like we just talk about 3 costs. Like I don't need that. I'd rather have the Sentinel personally. So I don't know. Is there any world? Does anybody have any strong feelings for punishing 1?
Yeah, not with Palp. I mean, I like putting this in a Cad Bane deck, but for Palp, not really. Not enough reason for me to include it. I mean, it does have a very decent stat line, but I'm probably focusing on ramping at this point. And unless I absolutely need to have a unit out in space, I'm probably just putting in Black Sun Enforcers or Starfighters to just plug that gap and focusing on getting my super laser techs out and just ramping up as I need to.
Yeah, I think it is a good card. I don't think it quite fits in here. It is nice, though, especially going again, like if someone has experience tokens, that's technically an upgraded unit that's defeated. So it does ready a lot, but it just doesn't quite slot into Palp Red, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
The last one is Finalizer. And I would just say I'd rather run a Devastator than a Finalizer. So I don't know what else to say.
It's cool that it's an 11/11.
Yeah. I like the art.
Yeah, the art's sick. It's first order. First order is cool.
I mean, I love capturing a Crate Dragon, but I mean, Devastator. Man.
You're eating 11 though when you capture that.
So whatever you capture the Crate Dragon with is eating 11 damage, and he gets his Crate Dragon back.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Let's move on. Let's move on to the new cards for events. So I think Timely Intervention is an easy one to discuss, right? Like to me, that's kind of. I feel that that's unnecessary because it gives us free ECL and it gives us a smuggle card. I feel pretty strongly about Timely Intervention, maybe more of a 2 of than a 3 of. But I don't want to spend an hour discussing the nuances of whether we should run 2 or 3 of this. It's to me, I feel that there should be a slot opened up for Timely Intervention, personally.
Yeah.
I'd run 2 over 3. I've ran 3 for a bit, and I'm just like, nah. I just control well enough that I don't actually need to ambush out my own units.
Yeah, I think I definitely haven't experimented with it a lot. I think that Pia is kind of covered for me for that, but I do think that there is, especially late game, it's a really nice card to have. I think that some of its shortcomings might be like if you draw it sometimes without that gas to back it up, it can feel bad, but you can always flip it with the smuggle. Though sometimes you might need 11 resources to flip an 8 drop with ambush. But especially if we can get that Ruthless Raider in for 9, I think that feels really good with the Timely Intervention.
All right, the next one is Pillage, right? So we just talk about Pillage. I personally don't feel Pillage belongs in the deck. I could see it as a possible sideboard card, but I don't know. Like, again, the problem I have with it is it just doesn't, like, it does damage, right? And it does, or not damage, it does, like, damage to their hand. But if they already have units on the table, it doesn't do us any good. So if we can't control the units, or guarantee we're going to control all the board and then pillage them, I don't know if it's worth putting in this deck.
Yeah, I just feel like it's kind of a wasted turn. Like, it's more of like I want to get to the end game by denying my opponent tempo, and stripping cards is sort of tempo altering for them, but they get to choose. Like, they're just gonna, well, I'm not gonna play this, I'm not gonna play this. Oh well.
I can definitely see it as, and I consider it as a sideboard. I think it's really good against Boba Yellow, because Boba Yellow is just playing all their cards, and aggro, which also wants to play all their cards. So if you are against an opponent who just has an empty hand, that you're on initiative, they draw 2, and you play that pillage, that feels really good. And I also think if you ever play a Palp Mirror, it's really good. I've been hurt by pillage. I wouldn't put it main board at all. I think that you run into too many instances where, they have 5 cards in hand. And I think another thing will also have to be said, where you're kind of hurting yourself if you're playing any force chokes or anything that does let your opponent draw a card, because you're taking away the teeth to pillage there. So I think it has potential as a sideboard card. I wouldn't put it as a main ever.
All right, Palp's return. In this
I've put it in as a sideboard. I love, especially when like my Palp dies, and then I can just play Palpatine's Return and get a major discount on my Palp coming back and redoing 6 damage again. Always a really nice swing for my side. I think it's definitely worth having 2 copies of it in the deck.
Yeah, I definitely would put this on the side, just because if they have, it's really good against control matchup, right? If they put an Avenger and one of your big units was solo on the board, right? Like your Palpatine, or maybe like a Devastator or Vader, you can bring it back, and that's really nice, especially if it's like a Vader or a Palpatine, because you're only paying 6 resources for it. But hard to justify main decking it.
I ran 1 in my sideboard. I went up to 2 in my sideboard, and I've even Palped returned like an Emperor's Royal Guard. Like it can get body, it can fill a slot, especially against any those control matchups, or a super aggro where they're just like, this is a great card against pillage. Oh, you want to put Palpatine in my discard? Sweet, I'll get him back cheaper. It has a lot of use, but yeah, definitely a great sideboard card.
All right, Daring Raid. I threw that in there because it's a 1 cost, deal 2 damage to a unit or base. I don't know if this fits the cut though. Like I don't know. It feels really good against Han Blue, but that's about it.
It's
because it's not a body. We're not putting a body out there.
Yeah. To me, if I would put it on the sideboard, but I'm always on the fence on whether or not I would actually use it, because it's kind of just doubling up on Palp's ability. You're not sacrificing a unit, but you're still doing 2 damage to a unit, which could potentially set yourself up for Palp, coming out and taking out that unit there. Sometimes all you need is just to do 2 damage to a unit to take it out as well. So there's some utility there, but at the same time, it's taking up valuable deck space, and Pop already has a long list of very needed units in the deck already that this feels like it doesn't have enough punch. I would much rather have Fell the Dragon for some of those larger units that are going to come out than having a Daring Raid. So for me, it's a very, very conditional sideboard card if it even makes that. And for me, I don't usually run Daring Raid in my decks.
Yeah, it's kind of like I already have Palpatine's ability, so I don't really need to do it, even though like you would think that it like tracks, right? Because it's like out of hand damage, it's super cheap, you get things for Palpatine, but then it's like that. Also, I don't want it in my deck because I have other things.
Yeah.
Complete agree, no notes.
Yeah. So then we have Remnant Reserves. I put this in here, but I feel like it's a worthless card. I get it. You can search the top 5 cards of your deck for 3 units to reveal them and draw them, and like again,
and then not play them because it costs 4.
Exactly. And like, so that's kind of why it's like I don't know. Like the only time this is ever useful is against if somebody's going to pillage you. Like that's the only time this is ever, in my opinion, useful ever. And I don't know if I care enough to run it just for the pillage decks.
And if you're running a very Imperial heavy deck, I would rather just play Grand Moff over that because you get the 2/3 for 4 that gets 2 Imperial units in the top 5, which chances are you're probably hitting them with all the Imperials you're running.
You know what? That's fair enough. That ends the discussion right there. There's 0. That card is worthless. They should have just made that a 2 cost. All right. Price on Your Head is another option for a ramp card. It's not a horrible ramp card. It's not as easy as Resupply, but it is cheaper.
Any deck that I run, Price on Your Head, I'm just like, I don't want this. I don't need this. Like, I'd rather do something else for 2 resources. I don't need the... Like, there's ways around, because your opponent has agency too, right? They can just be like, oh, here's the bounty. I'm just going to, like, do my best not to have them collect that bounty. Or, like, make it really difficult. Or, like, remove it somehow. Or, like, bounce it. Or kill the unit that you were expecting to use to kill the Price on Your Head thing. It's just kind of a massive tempo loss for not much that you wanted. But that's the...
Yeah, I started off. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're good. You're good.
I started off running when the first set dropped. I'm like, wow, 2 drop for an extra, potentially an extra resource. This is great. I would run it in Palp Green, Palp Red. Even though you have the ways to the open fires and the force chokes to try to kill them, exactly like you said. I think that there's a lot of ways that the opponent can just make you feel, oh man, I just wasted 2 resources. This feels bad. There's a lot. I had a lot more feel bad moments than feel good moments, though. On occasion, like especially if you're going second, they do like a drop a 2/3 or like a something, and you drop Price in Your Head, and the next turn you kill it. That feels great, but then again, I'd rather just get a unit out turn 1 and then turn 2 play either a super laser tech or that resupply. So I think that it has a lot of shortcomings, but it's another avenue for extra resources.
I threw Choose Sides in there. I don't feel that that's a good card either in this deck. But it is like
costs. Yeah,
it's kind of like a traitorous per se. But the problem is you have to have something to exchange with them. So,
yeah.
I mean, it is kind of funny trading out a V-Wing. Don't get me wrong, but it's certainly interesting. I'm sure it'll be better later on. I'm just not. There's so many other card slots I'd rather have, especially at 7.
Yeah. No Bargain is another one. Each opponent discards a card from their hand, then you draw a card. Again, it feels like I'd rather play a unit than that.
Yeah, exactly.
I have seen people running that for semi-hand destruction, but I don't know. If you're not running Pillage, maybe that one's also a worthless card to play.
I did want to mention back on Price on Your Head. I actually keep those as a sideboard if I'm facing another Palp list, mainly because the number 1 unit that I put this on is a super laser tech, because I know that they're going to kill them. Might as well just get a resource too. They ramp out ramp 2, right?
That's smart. Yeah, I like that play.
Not just be more disrespectful and traitorous. They're
don't.
That's how you do it.
and then Palp it after that.
Yeah. and then put it into your own resources out of dominance.
The last one is give into your anger, and so this one I had a little bit more. I have a little bit more of a reason for this. Is more for like an aggro type thing, and the reason I asked the question is because it does the 1 damage, so it is useful later on in the game without sacking your unit. If you pull it later in the game, it can also be useful because it forces them to attack into it. So, for example, if you're playing against like a Sabine or something like that, and they have, they're going to Fleet Lieutenant, you could throw 1 damage on there for 1 cost to force them to attack into whatever unit you have on the board. And then it possibly can kill it back. So, like, I'll use Scanning Officer, for example. So if they have their Battlefield Marine, I throw the 1 damage in there, force them to attack a Scanning Officer, and it's like Scanning Officer attack them for 3 damage. But I don't know if it's worth a card slot, right? Like, I feel this is either a main deck or it's not any deck. Like, it's just, it doesn't exist in this. And the problem is like, unless you're going to run over 50 cards, I don't know if this is something that's viable enough. But it is only 1 cost, and it looks really cool in hyperspace, by the way.
It is a gorgeous hyperspace card.
Yes, I have 2 hyperspace foils of this thing. So
it is for me a conditional card, and the reason I like to run this particular card is mainly with if I have the Dark Troopers and they have a unit that is like a 1 cost or like a Moisture Farmer, and have them like deal damage to them and then force them to attack my Sentinel afterwards. I mean, it's a great way for your Dark Trooper to get an experience. Really easy. But beyond that, I mean, if you're having trouble getting units on your board and they're building up to like bringing in a Vader or bringing in a Crate Dragon, I mean, I would love to, or actually, I'm sorry, not a Crate Dragon, like a Walker, for instance. Just having to make sure that they swing into a particular unit does help to at least delay the game until hopefully I can get bailed out by another unit that can come in. But again, it's just very, very situational. So probably a good sideboard card to keep on the side, but probably not something that's going to be a main deck.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just haven't like figured out if it's worth running or not.
You got to have a big brain for that one. I think it's very, very situational, but I think in the right situations, it can it's an amazing card though. Like for me, I don't see running it. Like, I think exactly what you said. Either you run it or you don't run it at all. And also I think makes for a lot of fun, like auto included in any Twin Suns deck. Like that's just a fun one right there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the last part of it that I want to kind of go over is kind of what is the game plan versus some of the different decks, right? Like, so we talked a lot about the different cards, probably longer than what I had really anticipated, going into some of the newer cards. And so, like, what's kind of the game plan? So we know that Palp can struggle sometimes, but Palp's also a toolbox. And in red, in my opinion, Palp is a bigger toolbox than he is in any of the other colors. And green runs very well just because there's a lot of double green synergy and yada, yada, yada. But the question becomes is with Palp Aggression, what is kind of the different play lines? What is the different strategies against each of the different decks? So I don't know. Is there one that we want to tackle first?
Might as well just go left or right, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go aggro, because aggro is the hardest matchup, in my opinion, when it comes to something that has like an extreme aggro or something that can out-tempo us. Especially if we're not running hand destruction. So I'll tell you, a double metal ceremony is not a fun card to deal with.
Oh gosh.
So aggro. Let's go aggro first. So we could talk, really it's Sabine, it's Kylo, and it's Boba Yellow. So Boba kind of fits both of the aggro piece, or the aggro and mid-range piece, but Boba Yellow is typically more of an aggro toolbox type deck. It usually wants to go face very quickly. And it can be a pain in the ass, especially if they have Cunning and Waylay in their hand at the same time. Like, doesn't matter what you play, they just keep getting to attack. So what's the game plan against aggro?
Stall, baby. Like that's if you can get Palp out, they've messed up. Like if you can hit that late game, you can get that reinforcement walker, start to crawl your way back out. They're floundering, and I think especially with Sabine and especially with Kylo, the way that they like to run, coming from aggro myself, is they try to beef up their leaders, because not every control will remove leaders, but when you're Palp, you just deal in damage, so you can remove leaders like that. So Kylo can get open fired. Make sure you get that before he gets any fallen lightsabers or anything on him. Sabine can get force choked. Boba is a little bit more annoying, especially if they get that Boba Fett's armor on him. That is bad, but like I always try, if their turn is epic action deploy leader, my turn is play that card in my hand that I've saved that does some sort of damage. And besides that, run as many sentinels as you can, heal up. You at first usually you'll be resourcing a lot of those heavy like 8 costs and everything, because right now I'm just focused on things that I actually can get out. And usually the late game, if I can stay alive till then, it kind of solves itself. So that's my opinion on the aggro matchup there. And I've had a lot of favorable ones, but it can get out of control quickly. Like I think you mentioned before we started that Kylo Ren that did that one on turn 2 under perfect conditions. Like, well, that was fun for you playing. I got out my super laser tech.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of it's like you have to rely on like your royal guards. You got to get those that phase 3 troopers are really good, and really just trying to control space is going to be a little bit of an issue for you against Sabine, because you just have like your Black Suns until you have your like Raiders. I'm not sure if you. I don't think you didn't run Star Vipers, right? No.
No, I didn't.
Star Vipers, Yularen, and Salacious Crumb are huge too. Just to heal, because that's a form of stalling. So that's always big. Yeah, and keep those force chokes and those open fires. Those are necessary.
So with aggro then, right? Like, so is if aggro is a big part or a bigger part, do you put part of your sideboard towards aggro then?
Yeah, a lot of my sideboard is anti-aggro. I actually have Traitorous in my side. I don't main deck it just because there's like pose and stuff around me that like just remove upgrades, so that kind of gets catastrophic sometimes. But like Traitorous is really good, and a lot of I will run maybe a couple extra like cell block cards in there just to have a little bit more sentinels that they have to deal with.
Fair enough. All right, mid-range, kind of what's the game line play against mid-range decks, right? Like that's probably our easiest matchup in my opinion, because they can't ramp out fast enough, and they also aren't flooding the board in the same way that we are. I will tell you, it's annoying to play against a Boba Green that gets to get their overwhelming barrage off before you get yours off, but it's usually not the end of the game. So like, it's typically not. So like mid-range, you're controlling, but we have a little bit more of unique, things like Vader can ping just same way as we can. Rey now gets to heal all of a sudden, which is not super fun. And then Rey's giving out experience, and then we have Han, which now we have, I guess I only put one Han card in there, but now we have 2 different versions of Han that can do 2 different types of things. So against mid-range, what's the big game plan then?
I mean, usually mid-range just, again, like kind of delay it, but you should win out in the end game. Yeah. And they're not like super, super aggressive, right? So like you should be able to do it. I don't have like too much of advice, just more of continue doing what you're doing, control the board.
I think against mid-range especially, you can be patient on your Palp flip. because they'll usually run something big, but they usually curve out around 7-ish. And so if it's that Boba Fett, save that Palp Phillip for the Slave one, because that is the biggest threat right there. Like, that Cantina Bouncer might seem a little bit tasty, but he's just 3 damage at the end of the day. So just save that Palp Flip for their best unit, because against aggro, I flip for any set. Like, I've flipped for some lame targets. I've gotten my fair share of the Echo base defenders just from a Palp flip, which might seem a little interesting that he's corrupting the minds of those poor people on Hot. But mid range, they have good cards. You just got to be patient for them.
Yeah, I mean, if it's like a blue kind of like hero deck, they probably have like a Redemption, which is super tasty. If it's like green, they got like Home One. Other people's reinforcement walkers are always funny.
Avengers.
Yeah, Avengers.
You know what the best is playing against Akira that throws an Avenger out, kills your unit, and then she shields it, and then you just go, okay, thank you, and then you flip and take the Avenger.
Free shield. I also my hot take, I love against Han and a lot of any deck that run yellow hero. I love taking tech. I think that is really opens up your possibilities, because if you have 8 resources, you flip Palp, you can go and just, oh look, here's this Relentless Raider that I saved earlier in the game, or next turn I can go just grab a Vader. Whoa, cool! Thanks for this this neat tech that I had no way of having before.
Yeah, it's not like the most ridiculous thing I've ever stolen. That would be Wedge, because that was hilarious, because I get to ambush out my Devastator, but it's up there.
All right, the last one is Control, and I think this kind of like Control obviously is kind of a big variety, right? Like, we have the hard control, we have soft control. I think Control is to me, Control is actually a lot easier matchup outside of maybe a hard control, which has extreme like hand destruction and stuff like that, and can mill your deck. I hate when they can mill my deck. But like against like normal control, we have the ability to be aggro as needed and the ability to control as needed. So we have like some of the game plans. But what is your guys' game plan going into Control specifically?
For me, I think I cut down a lot less on Palpatine's ability and go a little more aggressive myself, just to push the damage race further, to force my opponent to react. So I'm not sacrificing my super laser turbo or technician as fast unless I'm jumping into a unit. And I'm more focused on taking on the base to force my opponent to react to that more. And then once I can get ramped up to a sufficiently higher resource count, then that's when I can start dropping my bigger units. Hopefully my opponent has gone through their hand and gotten rid of those pesky bounce cards to allow my units to stay there and have an effect on there. Holding my ambush units is probably key in making sure that I can deploy them when I need to, so that way they can attack immediately before my opponent can answer for those units once they come out on the board.
Yeah, my main thought going to Control is, oh, hey, you don't have 2 Devastators like I do? That's funny. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's like, oh, if you're going against blue, well, they probably have a super laser blast. Don't bring out Palpatine yet. Wait for him to drop the Avenger. Or like, cool, you're healing, but like if you're healing, you don't have board presence, and I have a ton of units in this deck, so I'm just going to continue just dropping more. Like, you probably went out in the long game, unless they're trying to mill you, and then it's like, well, okay. You have to rethink your strategy if they're going like straight mill.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that's why I have like sideboard cards for that kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah. Relentless. Relentless is a great card against Mill.
Yeah, Relentless is disgusting against any like aggro anything. I love it.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if you have 3 of them and you get to play all 3 of them, that on play, on defeat damage, that's 12 damage right there. That's more than a third of their base just in playing and getting that unit defeated. And that's guaranteed. There's nothing they can do with it unless they mill it. So that is a great backbone. And I think, just like JJ was saying, all your little units, play your little guys to your heart's content. I love playing Vader, even if there isn't an ambush target sometimes against control, just because it'll help grab another guy. And then when they play Power of the Dark Side, Vader's safe for a turn. You know, he brings in that automatic buffer. Anything you can do to try to just play it smart. Don't drop all of your big game winners, all your heavy hitters in at once. But you can crowd up the board with little weenies. And then when they play that super laser blast, that's when you can start bringing out some of the big guys. And I even sideboarded in for GenCon. I went for 2 Emperor's Legions. I cut that back down to 1 Emperor's Legion just because usually they'll go super laser blast, especially if you're going that strategy on the turn where they get 8 resources. And that Emperor's Legion just feels so good. Just scooping up all those discard cards and just holding them right there in your hand. So I like that just as a little one-of that you can tool in against control right there. Because it's a taxing matchup. It really is. You have to think all of your plays have to be really smart, and you have to know what control is, like what type they're doing. If they're doing the Aiden and they're healing, or if they're doing the Kira and they're going for more of the aggro control. Like they have different flavors, and so it is one of the more challenging matchups for me. But if you can get on top of it and can, that's the nice part about Palpatine Red is he has that element of aggro, and if you can do that aggro early and actually get aggressive enough, you can slot in against control pretty easily. So it's nice that you have that versatility.
Fair enough. All right. Anything else about Palpatine Red or Palpatine Aggression before we sign off? I think we've thoroughly discussed it. I mean, we haven't built any decks, so maybe we'll get back together in a month or 2 and build some decks. I don't know.
I think my last thought. Thank you so much, y'all, for having me on. JJ, Alex,
yeah,
pleasure meeting you too. It was great talking with you earlier, Chris, and thanks for inviting me on and searching me out here. It really is a pleasure. One thing I'll say, I think Cobb Vanth, that 3-drop green, I think that he is a slot. So
yep,
he's also an official.
Oh, yes, he's an official, the secret official. So I guess kind of where I'm thinking is like, will Palp survive into set 3? That will remain to be seen. I think Palp Green has a lot of potential, and that might be where I'm headed. I don't want to jump the Palp Red ship completely, but I think that it has some really good matchups. And I love the deck. It's that right amount of connivery that really gets you places. So I'm glad to be with some fellow Palp Red players. And again, thanks so much for having me on. That's all I've got to say.
Well, again, thanks for coming on. It's always nice to like find someone who plays Palpatine that's not like just Chris and myself.
That's just the 2 of
other
us.
Degenerate people, you know?
Oh yeah, they don't like it when you quote the movies at them too. I found like no one wants to have fun. Like, you know, you'll come in and with regular matchups and you'll be like, oh, I like Star Wars, and then when you beat them and you're in game 2 at the end and it's gone to time and you tell them about the Tale of Darth Plagueis the Wise, they don't want anything to do with you.
I just tell them I'm the Senate.
Precisely.
Oh, fair enough. All right. Well, thank you again, Elliot, for joining us. Thank you all for watching us. We do have. I will just shout this out again. I guess I should have said this at the beginning of the episode because who watches to the end. But if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, when we hit 100 viewers or 500 viewers, we will give away a Grogu event exclusive card to some random lucky user, which means you're going to have to watch to find out if you're the lucky user. We'll do like a special cast, and I'll do like a random name generator out of our YouTube for it. So we really recommend you subscribe to us, follow us on Twitch. You can follow us as well on Podbean. And then you could join our Discord if you so care to.
And some exciting news that I just thought about, and I'll send you this, Chris, but for 500 viewers with the Grogu event exclusive, I will send you a Vader to add to that. I was lucky enough to get a GenCon Vader, so I'm on an extra Vader. So this just in, you also get a Darth Vader just for the Palpatine love right there.
All right, well, there you go, baby. There you go. Like, shit, help us get to 500 subscribers quickly. I guess that's how it changes before Elliot changes his mind.
Syndicators or syndicatons? Like, what's the what's the preferred plural of y'all?
My God,
the viewers
is awesome.
Syndicate lackeys. I don't know. I guess we've never really said that. We've never thought about it. You could go syndicatons. There you go. We'll make shirts. We'll make like little shirts with different cats that have different like syndicate logos above their heads.
Man, I'm a syndicaton in the mitten. This is great.
Oh, Jesus.
Yes.
Look at that. All right. Well, now it sounds like we got to make new memes. I don't have time for that tonight. We have gone late. Elliot, thank you for joining us so much. Make sure you join us next week, 9 p.m. Eastern time. We will have another live episode, not discussing Palpatine for once. We will have other content. Though I will forewarn you, this week I have my Jabba Red deck tech dropping. So if you would like to subscribe, I will have that. Not the best deck, but it is a very fun deck that I've been playing and having decent success against everything but aggro, it seems. So aggro, I can't crack the aggro code yet, folks, but we'll get there. But watch for that. That's dropping. That'll drop this week, probably later in the week. I'll have something on Thursday for you all for that. And then ironically, probably the week after, we'll do a deck tech for Palpatine Green. We will also, Alex and I have Palpatine Green, so we'll be doing that. So I don't know, maybe we'll invite Elliot back, and maybe we won't do an episode. We'll do like a private recording, and then we'll release it as a much shorter deck tech than what we went into tonight. So with that being said, thank you all. Have a good night, and we will see you on the flippity flop.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks for listening.